Oxana Malaya began her life living with dogs. Rejected by her mother and father, she somehow survived for 6 years, living wild, before being taken into care. There are few cases of feral children who have been able to fully compensate for the neglect they suffered. Oxana is now 22, but her future still hangs in the balance. Have scientists learned enough from previous cases to rehabilitate her? For 6 years, Oxana Malaya spent her life living in a kennel with dogs. Totally abandoned by her mother and father, she was discovered behaving more like an animal than a human child. For 2 centuries, wild children have been the objects of fascinating study. Raised without love or social interaction, wild or feral children pose the question, what is it that makes us human? Since Oxana's discovery, scientists have looked for clues in the handful of other recorded cases of feral children in their efforts to rehabilitate her. She's made astonishing progress in ways that many thought impossible. And now, aged 22, Oxana wants to take an extraordinary final step: to be reunited with the parents who neglected her.
I want to see them with my own eyes so desperately, because I've been told I have no parents. But actually, I do have them.
One of the central questions in all of science that has to do with humans is, are we a product of our genes or are we a product of our experience? The old nature-nurture issue.
Feral children tap into this because they are the natural experiment that we're not allowed to carry out. Part of being a human is being brought up by humans. If you're not brought up by humans, are you completely human? And I think in some of these cases, that's the issue that we're dealing with.
The case of Oxana Malaya has brought up these issues all over again. The doctors attempting to rehabilitate her first wanted to learn the facts of her story. The information was sketchy. Oxana was born in November 1983.
When the baby girl was born, she weighed 5 pounds 11 ounces and didn't have any abnormalities.
Her parents were alcoholics. One night, too drunk to care, they left their daughter outside. Looking for warmth, the 3-year-old crawled into the farm kennel. She curled up with the mongrel dogs that probably saved her life.
Mum had too many kids. We didn't have enough beds, so I crawled to the dog and started living with her. I would talk to them, they would bark, and I would repeat it. That was our way of communication.
A concerned neighbor finally reported Oxana's case to the authorities when the girl was 8. By then, the effects of her time with dogs had had serious consequences for Oxana's development.
She was more like a little dog than a human child. First of all, she couldn't speak, or she could hardly speak. And actually the purpose of speaking, well, she didn't think it was necessary to speak at all.
When we're talking about how does a child learn to live with dogs, there's obviously no deal as such, but there's give and take. So the dogs are giving their love, their attention, their acceptance in a sense. And what the child must give is that they've got to learn to adapt to the dog's situation. And if that means eating raw meat and scavenging a rubbish tip, that's what they're going to have to learn to do, because otherwise they're not going to survive.
She used to show her tongue when she saw water, and she used to eat with her tongue and not her hands. She couldn't understand what a mirror is, and when she was showed a mirror, she didn't even recognize herself. She didn't even look at it.
Oxana's lack of self-awareness makes her, in some respects, more like an animal than a human.